Hey fan peeps, this is your podcast host Kunal here. I started this during the pandemic, and in this podcast I discuss my nerdy thoughts and hobbies with you, with the occasional special guest. From anime to Zeppelins, we talk about it all. Has the sun returned?
It's poking in and out, here and there.
Like a bitch.
Yeah, it's cloudy. It was cloudy this morning, and then now it's like poking out. Yeah,
Okay.
It was definitely hot driving on the way over here.
Yeah, I definitely think that like kind of works for today's episode because I saw a movie once. The takeaway that I had from it, it's like life is like a stream that has a mighty current, and the stepping stones are the good parts in life that you build. And we can relate that to today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Sidney again.
Hello, peoples.
He's a buff nerd.
Yes.
As I like to hear.
For recreation.
What are you crunching iron when no one's looking?
Oh, yeah.
With his teeth. You can use that analogy for space. And a lot of space, just like with Shatner and Bezos and all the other white billionaires talk about going to space. It's really black, which makes me think that it's just going to be a good time. But what I was really trying to say is that it's a lot of literally empty space. There's not a whole lot for millions and millions of miles for certain things. Like it's interesting when you think that, because that means like every sun that's around is one that really allows life to form. So it's kind of like you have to be
true. I
take that to be you be the sunlight that you can for life to be like, yeah, sure, life can be cold, unforgiving, terrible, all these things, but it's a matter of building certain things that help facilitate life.
I like that.
That goes out there. I mean, yeah, I thank you.
Yeah.
And so this episode has a very funny and also a very like timely like genesis, shall we say?
Yeah.
Part of it was, it must have been like about a month ago or something.
Yeah.
So we met up just for the hell of it. And initially it was going to be like plans to meet people, and then that crashed and burned, and then we were just like, let's just come and hang out. So I'm hanging out with you, your partner. Shout out to Faye, who's been on the show before.
Hey, babe.
And you brought up this one part that bothered the shit out of me. It bothered the absolute shit out of me for a straight 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was trying to find, you want to say it?
The trying to find the epic stunt that Mr. Michael Dorn from the Next Generation pulled off. It's a specific episode where he does this double kick in the bridge, and we could not find the episode.
It bothered the shit out of me. Like I Googled the hell out of it. I looked for it everywhere. I tried everything, and every time it would be like, oh, what's really sad is that it would show like times Worf got nerfed in Next Generation,
which is plenty,
which is unfortunately really plenty, because it's got to be like the woke white people in the room running like, oh, we'll just make him fall and shit. It's fine. And poor Michael Dorn just had no choice.
Nope.
I don't know.
We gotta nerf you somehow.
They do kind of redeem him later on in the show, and like even in like the Picard show that just finished.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the longest time I couldn't find it, and then one day I'm texting you, and thank goodness for GIFs.
Oh yes.
And I found it there, and I'm like, wait a minute, and is this the one? Because I was trying to send you like something stupid or goofy, and then I scrolled down, like, wait a minute, that's exactly what you're talking about. And we found out it was from season 1. It was the episode of it was one of the Q episodes.
Yeah. Was it 7? Episode 7?
I think it was 7.
Yeah,
because like Tasha's still around and everything.
That's right.
Yeah. And I was just so happy. And then so that's the first part of how this episode started. The second part of how it started was I was on TikTok, as I normally am, too much. I go through these cycles of deleting it and reinstalling it.
Same.
Oh, really?
I do the same thing. That's funny.
No way. That's hilarious. Okay. I love it. Just because I was like, okay, I've been on this for too long. I need to get off of it. I'm like, there's some really good shit on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of them was done by this guy who was talking about what is the need for Utopia to show up in art and fiction. And apparently, like, someone in the comments said, what about Star Trek? And he had an explanation of why it didn't count, because it was kind of a child of the 60s and whatnot. And I disagree with that. I think he was probably talking about TOS and maybe not the other shows, but I definitely think Next Generation is when they really hit their groove and they really hit their stride on like what humanity can do if, I don't want to say get our shit together because that's a little unfair. I want to say like can truly like work together with each other, put our differences aside and see what we can really reach for.
Be more focused. Yeah.
Being more focused is something I like hearing. Like there's that famous clip from the newsroom with, I think it was Ted Daniels. Was it Ted? What's his name? He was in Dumb and Dumber. That's what I always...
Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels,
yes,
not Ted.
Yes.
I always remember him in Dumb and Dumber because I'm a child of the 90s.
Of course, right.
Yeah. And so it was very weird for me to see him in a very serious role.
Yeah.
I was like, when is he going to break out the tuxedos and shit?
It was jarring. Yeah.
But there's that classic clip of him talking about how we are not the greatest country in the world.
Exactly.
And on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends it by saying, he's like, we used to work really hard to reach for the stars. And that's something that always kind of stuck out to me whenever I'm watching Next Generation, because literally they are roaming the stars when that happens. So everyone knows from 90, well, maybe not everyone, but you should know. You should do homework. God damn it. Go and look. The original series, Star Trek, the original series, went for 3 seasons, didn't do well. Only 3 reruns. And actually, you probably know about this, Lucille Ball.
Yes, yeah.
Is the reason why it really subsists today.
He revived it, yeah.
She was so powerful in Paramount, the company Paramount, and she was like, "You need to put this back on the air. Like this is amazing." And because of that, we have her to thank for it.
Oh yeah.
And so that runs for 3 years. Then Star Wars comes, and they're like, "Well, we can't really compete with that because it was such a phenomenon."
Oh yeah.
So they went and just did a bunch of movies with the original cast.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the 80s roll around. And they're in talks to, I think Roddenberry wanted to do another TV show because enough time had passed. The amount of uproar that happened as a result of it was astounding. Yeah,
people forget about that.
Yeah.
Like, it was not, no one was looking forward to it. It was like, how dare you touch the classic?
Right, how dare you do something like how, like, it was like, leave it where it is, don't do anything like that. You can't replace Spock and Bones and Kirk. Which is funny in retrospect. But there's this amazing documentary called Chaos on the Bridge. And of all the people, Shatner runs it. And let me ask you this. What are your views on Shatner on a whole?
He's a quirky, interesting person. But
let me hear how you really feel.
I'm from what I've just what other people have said about him. I guess earlier on in his career, he was kind of a dick.
Yeah, definitely. You know? That matches up with a lot of people saying that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he didn't show up to Leonard's funeral. I don't know if you know about that.
Did not know that.
Yeah. Apparently, on the one hand, I understood it because he was like, I had a commitment and I was already there and I couldn't leave. I kind of respect that. I get that. Yeah. But apparently he released some stuff later saying that Leonard stopped responding to his messages.
Oh.
I honestly personally think Leonard Nimoy got tired of his shit and was just like, I'm done. Because I don't think he brought the best out in Leonard a lot of times.
Interesting.
That's my own view of it. That's a whole different podcast episode.
Wow. Man.
Yeah, there's a whole,
Huh.
And like a lot of the other original series people, especially Mr. Takei, has been notorious for how... Because they were out to the main cast. Everybody knew in the main cast. He just wasn't public about it.
Right.
Until like 2005-ish.
Oh, let me guess.
And so he was just an asshole to him the whole time. For one, being Japanese, and 2, for being homosexual.
Yep. I don't want to hear that. Oh, it was the time. Like, no, you're an asshole.
I mean, he's still an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Like, it didn't seem like he changed with it or anything.
Yeah.
And then he's been after like woke people on Twitter and shit like that. So
he's become
he became one of those guys.
That's how ironic. You're in Star Trek.
I know, right?
But you're
it's like finding fans. Like, I'm not going to pull any punches on this episode. I'm just like, I'm Stockton rocked and later rock. Hit the block on the clock.
Oh.
TikTok. All right.
Keep it going. Keep it nuts.
I don't think everyone wants me to. I saw this thing on Twitter the other day. It's like, it's always weird to find Star Trek fans who are hardcore conservatives. I won't say Republican. I will say hardcore conservatives.
Yeah.
Did you guys just not pay attention to anything?
Right.
In this show?
Right.
Like cognitive dissonance must be really strong in your head.
Exactly.
My God.
Based off all the like philosophies and stuff in the shows, it's like that's communist ideas according to the conservative party.
Yeah, it's a huge thing in the show. Like, I think they use parts of communism and parts of socialism for the show within the like we were talking about this off air. The way that the Federation runs is very much akin to that. I don't want to drive off too much off the point, so let me get back to the main point.
Gotcha.
Documentary called Chaos on the Bridge. They outline about how literally chaotic it was to get the Next Generation up and running. The first 3 seasons are real rough. Yeah. Especially the first, because get this, Patrick Stewart's agent told him, just do it. It'll probably last 6 months. You'll make a bunch of money and then just get out of there.
That's crazy.
Right? Because even when he's like phoning in, and I'm using the strongest air quotes I have of a performance, he's still pretty good.
He's darn good. Like, I almost didn't tell, like, I didn't believe in, like, like, watching him, like, oh, I can tell that he's not as in, like, deep with it as he is in the later seasons. And it's like, wow.
Very much like, he's like, I will deliver, I will do this, but I'm like, I just want my latte and I want to go home. Give me some tea and let me go home.
Right. Earl Grey.
And keep it hot. So the first 3 seasons, Roddenberry is a big-time hippie. He has a very interesting life. There's a lot of podcasts and stuff that talk about his life. He was a pilot. He was in World War II.
Yeah.
He was an investigator on like airline crashes. So like,
what?
Yeah, he's lived a wacky life, like very wacky life. And then he knew a couple of the cast members like Leonard Nimoy and Nichelle Nichols. One, because he was romantically involved with
well, that'll do.
Nichelle Nichols.
That'll do it. Yeah.
But like Leonard Nimoy showed up on his show that did not last called The Lieutenant. He plays a very different character.
Oh.
I was watching clips of it when I heard about this, and I was like, why is Spock having emotions now? What's going on? Like it was very odd, very odd. So he knew some of the cast, and then when he got this idea going, he was like, let's do Star Trek, and et cetera, et cetera. But my point being, back to Next Generation, is that he was a big time hippie, so he was doing drugs all the time.
Oh wow, yeah,
like a lot of drugs, and lived a very unhealthy life that made him kind of like disappear for a couple months sometimes.
I do remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, and like it's probably my ass that told you that.
Probably, yeah.
So he would disappear for a couple months, and the writer's room would be like, oh, okay, we can write. And so then it would get consistent for a little while, and then Roddenberry would recover. He would come back, and I shit you not, I've read articles, even the documentary says he's like, he would fire a bunch of people, hire some new people, and then the show would like change. So like the first 3 seasons,
wow,
there are things that they just recommend that they like never talk about again, or they just throw under the rug. And like Geordi should be able to read people when they're lying enough.
Yeah,
Troy should be able to sense like planets away.
Oh yeah.
There's some wacky stuff that goes on. So around the 3rd, 4th season is when he passes away, and this is when the show really fucking hits its stride.
Yeah,
and they know what they're doing, and this is why, truly, even with like the first 3 Rocky seasons, like there's still some great sci-fi and great episodes in there.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, you got it. We'll talk about a specific one that makes us laugh so hard. It's a really good show.
The reason why I love the Next Generation mainly was because it was a good example of moral choices, tolerance, and compromise amongst like different cultures in the universe, which is something we should be doing here on Earth. You know,
and it shows that we can do it.
Yes,
like the Federation is the big dog, or one of the big dogs in the galaxy. Like the ever big powers that you run into are the Romulans, the Klingons, but those are the 3 big, shall we say, superpowers in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And they run like sections of the quadrant of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And they do it not by intimidation or fear. They do it by a sense of acceptance, a sense of understanding.
Yes.
And at this point, Earth has been doing this for about 2 centuries. Star Trek Enterprise is like pre-Federation.
Yeah. They're just getting everything up and running. Yeah.
Yeah. We love it because there's so much of an example, because the show is very 80s. You cannot escape that at all.
Yes.
It is 100% 1980s and early 90s. So there's a lot of like cheesiness. The writing is very much like that as well.
Goofiness but serious moments too, of course.
Very serious moments. A lot of great moments out there, and it's written in the backdrop of the height of the Cold War, and also in 91, which is kind of around the time Roddenberry is gone. We're the dominant power.
Right.
At the point on the planet. And so it's kind of the Federation's almost like a fictional mirror version of the United States, where we're like trying to, like, we're kind of like resting on our laurels a little bit. And so the Federation's reached its max. There's a level of calm whenever I'm watching the show.
Yes, that is so true. I've never really
right?
put a finger on that, but yeah, I do feel calm watching that show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know any other show that does that.
Yeah, and like you have like, oh, the ship's about to be blown up like every other week. But
yeah,
but majority of the show, it's a lot of it's not a lot of action. There's a lot more talking.
Yeah, and I love that because, and I've droned on and on about my mental health and who I am and everything like that. And I think you've shared a little bit of it too off air.
Oh yeah.
But it is nice to have a show where, like, okay, we have problems, like, and there are episodes where it's like balls to the wall. We don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. Let's break it down. Let's exhaust all options first.
Yes.
What do we have that we can really do? And sure, there is a luxury of having high advanced technology. I'm not going to deny that at all. Like there are times where that does really come in handy. But it gave me an example, like growing up, because I caught it when I was on cable TV and Sci-Fi, and of all places, Spike would show.
Oh yeah,
Spike TV. Dude, like Spike showed reruns of it all the time.
They did,
and then G4 picked it up. Yeah, you and I did the G4 episode.
Yeah,
I didn't plan on that coming up today, but
wow, yeah,
that's right. And they had like the whole stock system show up there. Like I think I even mentioned it in that episode. My mom walks in on me watching Star Trek, and I'm like clutching my hair, and she's like, "What's wrong?" It's like, I bought a bunch of stocks and phasers, and Spock does something smart because that's how they would break up the stock. and I'm like, and I'm losing right now. And my mom's like, "Don't worry, like he'll do something smart." He didn't. She got my hopes up, but. Granted, that was TOS, but still, like they would show a bunch of reruns of all of these shows on those 3 channels, and they did a bunch of it. And this was very formative for me when I was a teenager. So that's never left me, and I don't think it ever will, honestly. Right. It gave me a precept of how we can actually do things if we really. I will say this: like humans have a capacity for great, terrible things and great, powerful things.
Absolutely,
powerful things in a positive light and powerful things in a negative light. Even Dumbledore says, like, it's hard to be a friend to someone and do what is right and what is easy.
Yeah.
That really stuck with me. It's a great example of what can we really do in this situation. And Captain Picard, like Patrick Stewart, does an amazing job of kind of being the de facto father.
Yes.
In the series, where he is, when he's in the show, I think he's playing a 50-year-old. I think at that time he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
So if you're like me, you've read his autobiography, and basically you find out he had actually a pretty rough upbringing, even like his, and rough in the terms of like the way that the family dynamics were.
Okay,
like they had everything needed. Like it's essentially Utopia. War. I don't think we've said this yet, but war and poverty is gone. It's a united Earth government.
Yeah.
Everything you need is given to you. We have these technologies called replicators now, and they literally do what the name implies. It replicates whatever you need.
Right. So there's like no need to buy things because you can always just make things.
Right. There still are like restaurants and stuff like that, but on the whole, there's no more starvation. There's no more war.
Right.
There essentially was this big nuclear war called World War III, and it did such a hard reset for us that I'm skipping over a lot for the sake of the episode. There's a lot of lore that falls into that, but essentially after that, we get our shit together. I'm going to use it. I'm going to say it. We get our shit together and we do things for the betterment of everybody instead of just for our own personal gain. And in doing so, we gain a lot, which is kind of an ironic twist or an interesting twist. What do you got anything you want to add?
Well, for what I like about Star Trek, the main thing that drew me in as a kid was just the concepts of space.
Let me ask you this. How did you get into Star Trek?
Well, I got into Star Trek mainly because of my father, because he watched The Next Generation. He also watched the original series.
Hell yeah. Okay.
And for some reason as a kid, that didn't really, it was interesting, but the effects were just too...
Dude, it's dated.
It's too hokey. Yeah, it was like...
Like The Next Generation is just enough to be okay for our generation.
Yeah.
Pun intended. And but it's starting to lose it.
Yeah.
Like even now.
Oh yeah. But as I got older, I can appreciate the original series for what it is and all the things it did. I'm not gonna take anything away from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a kid growing up in the 90s, and I caught it about the mid part of the 90s, the effects were great, and like the science of space travel blew my mind at that age. Like, I think it was like, what, this was before I was like in kindergarten, I think, when I caught it, like 94 or 93.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just seeing that on TV, I was like, what? You can go to places out there? Like,
it gives you something to shoot for.
Yeah.
It's like, that's an awesome jumping off point, if you don't mind. It showed us great technology that we can potentially make. Like, whenever I hear scientists say, like, I don't like sci-fi, it's not realistic, I'm like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Like, good sci-fi is predictive
Exactly.
because it shows us, like, oh, you know, what if we made this? Like, 100 years ago, we thought it was impossible for someone to fly across the world. 100 years ago, we also thought it would be possible to get out of the planet and land on another planet. 200 years ago, we thought, or no, even when I went skydiving, I don't know if I told you this, I've been skydiving.
Oh, no, nice.
Yeah, I went skydiving about 8 years ago, and they told us that it was discovered mainly in World War II, that they thought if you jumped out of a plane that I guess if you're in the stratosphere or whatever, if you fell out of a plane, you would just get ripped to shreds by gravity and everything.
Oh,
but
that's laughable now, but yeah.
Right, it was laughable now, but like not insane for what we knew back then.
Right.
And so like that's around the time that, you know, parachutes were all developed and et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
And it just makes us realize that, like, oh, okay, we can do that. We can give it a shot. We can try it out. And I love how, I mean, you got Geordie LaForge, just helming the engineering department.
Yes.
And initially he was helming the actual ship, but then they moved him down to engineering, and it was just a much better fit.
Oh yeah,
it worked like a charm.
Yeah, that's another thing that grabbed my attention, because as a young kid, like young black child, like I watched Roots before I saw The Next Generation. So to see him play like a slave and then come out of that and become like the top engineer on the Star Trek Enterprise was
not
insane.
doing bad.
Yeah, I was like, all right, we're doing so we've made strides.
And for all its campiness, for all its goofiness, for all its problems, you cannot take away that Star Trek has the most diverse cast.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Like, most of it. Michael Dorn. Yeah. LeVar Burton.
Marina.
Yes.
You had quite, like, at the time, closeted queer characters, but then Asian characters. You had Keiko O'Brien. You had, I'm blanking on her name, but the nurse that helps Beverly. Like, it was maybe they aren't in the highest of positions all the time.
Right.
But it is a stepping stone, and I'll take a win where I can get it.
Oh, yeah.
It was not enough, but, you know, again.
It was, for the time, for TV, it's,
huge. Absolutely huge.
Whoopi Goldberg was in there, of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher later, said that because of Whoopi Goldberg showing up, it actually saved the show in a lot of ways. Because she was huge back then.
Yes, she was.
And she came on the show with her shaved eyebrows and a weird hat.
and a weird hat.
And then she was just an amazing voice of reason. She was a voice of calm and kindness.
Yes.
She was a voice of friendship, honestly.
Yes.
There's a mysterious friendship that she has with Picard. It's not romantic, but it is a very, they delve into it a little bit more in his biography, but she's a specific race of humanoids. She comes from a race of humanoids that predates Earth humanoids and whatnot. They're human-like, they're not humans. Now, granted, she did play, like, I will be the first to call out the bullshit on TNG. Like, there are some episodes that we will get into later on for fun.
Oh, yeah.
She did kind of play the magic black person.
Yep. Yeah. There's one in about everything. Every piece of great literature, but, you know.
Speaking of space puns, what was that show that you recommended to me? It was called Astronomy Club.
Oh, yes, Astronomy Club. Yes.
And
I was thinking of the exact same episode where they have all the magical black characters from every movie or show.
The way they wrapped that short was so good. And I can't ruin it because it's so fucking good.
Check that out.
It's on Netflix still. I watched it recently.
Yes.
Just to like watch it and enjoy that clip again. It's like the second episode, I think. And they essentially talk about, it's like a magical black person, a recovery program.
Yes.
But like the best part is who it's run by. and that gets revealed to you within the last 5 seconds of the segment, and it just I had to pause it because of how hard I was laughing.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
You gotta watch it.
You gotta watch it. I'll put that in the show notes, but like I cannot recommend that enough.
That's good. It caught me completely off guard.
That's a good short, honestly.
Yeah,
like, that's when it does a good job with that. But still, there's this element of calm that is on Star Trek, even when they like I said before, even when they have moments of complete disarray and when they're locked in battle, like we still have options. We still have all these things. It's very, I don't know if you're familiar with dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. It's typically attributed to borderline personality disorder, and I've been through it, and it's unfortunately associated with borderline, but it's really not. It's built. It can be used by everybody, and it's a good way of saying, okay, we acknowledge that these things are happening. Like specifically, there's the Riva episode. Do you remember that?
That sounds familiar.
The actor himself was actually deaf, and he has an ability to be this kick-ass negotiator, one of the top negotiators for the Federation and the Klingons, and to the point where Worf fears him. And Worf does not fear a lot of things.
That's true. Yeah.
Like Troy goes like, I sense a great sense of anxiety for him. He's like, and Worf hasn't really seen him, but he has heard about him, and he goes like, the Klingons have no word for negotiator until they met Riva. Like that's how intense the guy was.
Wow. But
there's a moment where I don't want to spoil it, but he suffers a great loss, and Picard like comes up to him and like snaps him out of his funk essentially, and just goes like, I just want to tell you I'm sorry and I'm here for you. Wow. And that is like, that's something, it's giving me like chills just talking about it.
Wow.
Because it just makes you feel seen. They didn't always succeed, but for the most part, they really succeeded in making you feel really good. Even the cheesy ass music that they use in that show. I love it.
I'm going to defend that music like all the way to the grave. I love it. The theme,
100%.
The theme is 100% still, to me, holds up today.
Oh yeah.
To me,
I will fight that person who denies it. I was like, I will not buy anybody lunch. I will fight you on this point that the music honestly made that show in a lot of ways.
Oh man,
especially with like the orchestral beginning that they have.
Oh yes, that like just hearing the instruments in the beginning, and you see all the planets in the solar system just pass one by one, and then you see the ship, and then you hear Picard. That's space, the final frontier. I was a kid like in kindergarten, but my butt would stop. I would stop at the TV screen. On that old CRT, and I would plant my butt down. I'm like, oh, Star Trek.
Oh, right.
This is something important. And I would sit down.
You know what's also really cool is that most of the cast are just completely tight with each other.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, all of them, even with Denise Crosby.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And everything. I don't think they're the closest. Well, I think she kind of comes and goes, but they are incredibly tight. They've been best men. Like Brent Spiner is the godfather of Beverly Crusher's child.
I did know. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
I think Michael Dorn. There's something else with Michael Dorn. Like I was watching clips today to get prepared for today's episode, and when they did Picard, even Terry Matalas said the same thing. And Terry Matalas is the guy that basically is the showrunner or director of the Picard show that just ended. And he said, like, the moment I hit cut, these guys are singing. They're dancing. They're making jokes with each other. Like, you would not believe the blooper reels that they had for Next Generation.
Oh, yeah.
Because the hours were long, but, like, after the second season-ish, they really, like, just started goofing off with each other. Which is funny, because in the first season, Patrick Stewart, got really mad at everybody for not taking it seriously.
That's so funny.
I know, right? And, like, now you can't think of him. Like, he's a good actor, but he also, like, is fucking funny.
Hilarious dude.
Like, yeah. Did you ever, I don't know if you caught this, there was a Funny or Die sketch with him years ago.
Oh.
Back when like Ryan Lochte was on the Olympics. And he was like, it's so weird. Like, it makes no sense. The video is just him basically like scalping tickets. And he does it in like a British like sing-song kind of way.
Oh, wow.
And it's fucking hilarious. It honestly is a hidden gem on Funny or Die's website.
Nice.
There's also a funny story with him because he has a very good sense of humor too. He had a very rough upbringing in his own life. I don't know have you heard about that?
I have.
Okay. Yeah. Basically his dad was a World War I vet who was actually stationed in India under the British Empire. And then he came back with shell shock, was highly abusive, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't.
Not excusable, but I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what they called it back then. So, yeah. And that really seeps through because they're even close with Will Wheaton. They even say that Will Wheaton is the reason why whenever they get together, Will Wheaton's the guy that basically is, I don't know if he's the linchpin, but he definitely is the person that keeps them on track.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, Michael Dorn specifically said this. He's like, oh, yeah, we love Will. Like, if he's not there, we're just like cynical bastards and make fun of each other. Yeah, it had really good special effects, really diverse cast. You meet so many different types of humanoids or alien type people.
Oh yeah,
multiple episodes of moral choices, and I love this. I grew up watching Star Wars.
Same here,
because it was the time like the prequels came out at that time, and I remember like liking it, enjoying it. I thought Jar Jar was hilarious, like even though it's problematic now.
Yeah, it's problematic. Yeah,
and I'm glad he's had some of a redemption arc lately.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
what they did. Yeah,
I'm glad that they did that. But I always felt like this sense of anxiety and dread that came with it.
You know what? It's weird because in both Star Trek and in Star Wars, like there's death, but people die, right?
Yes, 100%.
But I feel like death in Star Wars like happens just constantly, and there's like no.
They wash their hands of it.
They wash their hands of it. Yeah. There's no like taking time to like grieve or mourn or try and like move on.
Even when like Dooku gets killed. Like,
yeah,
they kind of they're like, oh yeah, good job, Anakin, and Anakin's just like standing there going like, I killed a Sith master,
right?
Like, what just happened?
Yeah, no, yeah, you did good. All right, on to the next thing.
Let's bounce. This is a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't seen a show that's been off the air for 35 years. Right. So be it. Denise Crosby, they talk about this in Chaos on the Bridge documentary. I don't blame her for what she did. I really don't. She was a hot blonde in the 80s, like. She was probably thinking, like, I can get any other show that I want.
Right.
And so she asked to leave because, quite frankly, she's barely in a lot of the first season. And when she is there, she's, like, noticed. But, like, there's a point where she wasn't getting enough screen time, arguably. Mm-hmm. And I can get that argument from her side because it was tumultuous at that point. So she asked to get written off. She gets written off. And honestly, like, the show kind of clicks into place.
Yeah.
When that happened. And she did not have the best career after that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't tell you what she's been in after that, yeah.
So she randomly showed up in that show Suits.
Oh, really?
In like the last 2 seasons as a villain character.
Interesting.
It was she was like tries to take over the firm. And it's wacky to see like Tasha Yar like in her late 60s now acting. It's just kind of like, she does a good job from what I've seen. But it's just weird to see her show up in that. She was in like 48 Hours.
Oh, okay.
She played like a small role in that.
Yeah, she was. I do remember that.
Yeah. It was still around the same time, so she was pretty young at that point.
She's 6. You gotta forgive me because I'm still thinking like, oh, the 90s. That was like 10 years ago.
10, 15 years ago, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's not like it's not like the 80s are gonna be 50 years in a decade.
Right.
Yeah. Nothing like that at all. Time is just a construct. But yeah, she leaves, and they have this. I keep it as a favorites in my YouTube favorite playlist, like of Tasha Yar's like funeral.
Man, that hit hard.
Right? The music for it alone is something that I actually went on YouTube to try and find just the soundtrack for that. And you can get it. It's absolutely beautiful. Whenever I amicably parted from my therapist earlier this year, I played that clip over and over because that's how it kind of felt. Because, a relationship was ending on good terms, but still. And
still lost, yeah.
Still lost. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's still a loss. And I mean, I definitely am for the better from that therapist. And, like, literally there's a line where she says, like, you took this scared, angry girl and you tempered her. And that's, it was a similar feeling I had with my former therapist. It was something I'll never forget.
Yeah.
So that dialogue of that entire funeral procession is very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's in the first season.
That's one of my favorite episodes. And then you get to see Data like try to like process like death, and it's like, yeah, you're in the same bucket with us, buddy.
I was just about to bring that part up. Like, he's like, he kind of is the de facto growing up child.
Yeah.
Aside from Wesley in that show. And
good point. Yeah.
And Picard, like, I think he handled it the best. He's like you said, he's like, no, you got it, 100%. I have nothing to add.
Yeah. There's a
really touching thing I heard recently that the part where you see Troy crying, that wasn't scripted.
Oh, wow.
So Denise and her were actually really close, and she was super sad that she was leaving.
Wow.
And so, like, when Frakes puts her arms around her and he starts crying, that was all real.
Oh, dude, I'm going to start crying now. Wow.
Right? Like, that just... I get you.
Wow.
There's moments... Apparently, Patrick Stewart has said that they have not received any Emmys for their acting.
No, whoa.
Apparently so. Now, I haven't double-checked this. I forgot to do that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
But apparently, according to an interview on when he was promoting the new show, Picard... They never received any Emmys for that. They received Emmys for special effects and other production stuff.
That's criminal, bro.
It is, because there's some amazing performances.
It might be a victim of the category it's in because it's science fiction, and at the time it probably wasn't seen as...
It's the same deal of having like no award category for stunt doubles.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, because that's some crazy... That's a lot of hard work, and they're risking their lives.
That just never gets attributed for. Like, fine, like, they're doing their job. They're doing great. Like, can we give them some accolades?
Right. Give them some recognition.
Yeah. Like,
there's a guy that died for the damn XXX movie with Vin Diesel.
Oh.
Like, and like, ugh. Like, that movie. That's the movie you died.
Like, oh my God. It was kind of nuts. During the pandemic, Boykia.
Yeah.
The guy who played Scott Adkins, and he was also in John Wick 4 recently. He was talking to Cynthia Rothrock.
Okay.
Legend of the 1980s Hong Kong Kung Fu era. Yes. This is a huge tangent, but fuck it.
Right.
and she talks about how they're running through like her movies, and it's playing in like the background when he's like video chatting her. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember this scene. That dude's paralyzed. That dude died. That dude's paralyzed. That dude's died."
Jesus.
And just going through, it's like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "Huh, that's just how it was back then."
Yeah.
I'm like,
oh my gosh.
I'm
man.
like, good God. Like, no wonder the safety regulations in Hong Kong at that time at least was ridiculous. Like,
oh my God.
There's a famous like Sammo Hung line. He's basically like the reason why the movies look a certain way is because like he actually knocked a guy so hard once his tooth came out, and he's like, "Put it in your pocket and let's keep on going."
Ooh.
So
that's the mentality they had.
That's what they did. So huge left turn out there. Let's turn it back. But amazing acting that kind of goes into that. And I have a couple episodes in point that I would really like to bring up for that. Specifically, I didn't write this down. I just remembered it now. Picard gets picked up by the Cardassians, and he's tortured.
Yeah.
It's a two-parter, and it's the one that everyone like makes fun of Jellicoe. Basically, like the reason why Sid's laughing is because there's a captain that showed up. He was actually a Beverly Hills Cop.
He was.
He's the captain.
Oh my God! Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's the captain from Beverly Hills Cop that shows up to temporarily take hold of the Enterprise, and he's just kind of the thing is he's not wrong, but he's a dick.
He's a dick about it. Yeah.
And but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is like there's a beautiful part of Picard, not him getting interrogated like and getting tortured, but basically like of him acting. His acting is phenomenal. And I was thinking about it today. The guy who interrogated him, the character, not the actor, but the character, is a horrible interrogator.
Oh yeah.
He let way too much of his personal life
get into the interrogation.
It was like I was watching it from afar. Like I've had years that I've seen this episode, and it's the classic "there are four lights" episode, and he keeps on like shocking him. He puts a thing inside him that causes him great pain.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, that dude unfortunately just passed away like recently, but he also was the guy who made the ooze in the Ninja Turtles movie. He's the guy. He's the scientist that was part of TGRI.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Apparently, he and Patrick Stewart were old acting buddies. So for this episode, he called him up. He's like, "I would love to have you do this episode."
Nice.
Which is also interesting because like after TNG, like around the fourth episode, Jonathan Frakes, the guy who plays William Riker, becomes a kick-ass, and I mean kick-ass director. Like he did a lot of Star Trek. I think he's still helming directing Star Trek now.
Oh, nice.
He did a lot of, like, you are hard pressed to find shows that even people who are divorced of sci-fi, you've probably watched at least one show that he's directed.
That's cool.
He made his career doing that.
Nice.
And in his life and everything after leaving Star Trek, or like jumping away from Star Trek.
They had a couple of them on the cast directed for the show. LeVar Burton, I think he directed some episodes too.
He did, and he did DS9, and he also did like NCIS.
Oh wow!
Like NCIS, I think one of the extension shows. So I think it was LA or one of the other shows. Like there's a couple people who are in those shows and just getting like pictures with LeVar Burton. It's actually really homey. Brent Spiner is another actor that does not get a lot of credit.
Yeah,
not only for portraying Data, but like let that alone be one that he's done a great job for, and even killed it even further in Picard. Honestly.
Oh yeah,
but. I'm getting a chill just even thinking about it. Like, he is way too good at playing a bad guy.
Yes, he's scary.
Like, he's scary good. Like, when he played Lore, Data's evil twin, essentially.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Like, the Data Lore episode specifically, like, he nearly succeeds in carrying out his plans. Like, the only thing that holds him down is his bravado, his ego.
Yeah,
that really takes him out. Any, like, acting episodes that kind of stick out to you? Are there any things that you want to mention before we move on?
My favorite episodes are always the Q episodes. Like,
really?
Yes, they're some of my favorite ones.
Okay.
John Delancey,
yeah,
man, as Q does a knockout job. Like
he does.
He's very memorable in those roles. How he's always fucking with Picard.
You know what I've always noticed, that when you really hate a character, that means the actor or actress is just doing a phenomenal job.
Yes, exactly.
And you love to just be fucking pissed off at him.
Yes.
Before I give it back to you, there's this specific part where like we're talking about great moments in acting and whatnot. And there's a moment that I wonder if it was written in the script or if it was John Delancey going when he's talking to Picard. Picard gives these amazing speech, and I listen to Picard's speeches whenever I'm feeling like I need like a pick me up or something. And he's like, Jean-Luc, sometimes the only reason I think I come back is because of these wonderful speeches you give. Yes. And I wonder how much of that was John Delancey and how much of that was the writing.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you see just this adorable smile on his face when he says that. So Q's your favorite.
He just loves fucking with Picard and trying to trip him up. But he's pressing all his buttons.
And he's good at it.
He's pressing all his buttons, but Picard perseveres always at the end. But it's just, I love to see the cat and mouse game between them.
That's a beautiful way of talking about it. Yeah, it definitely is a cat and mouse. I mean, Q definitely is impressed by him, even though he does like every once in a while like trounce Picard in one aspect or another. But like at the end, like Picard is usually pretty victorious, or he is pushing him to growth essentially the whole time. There's a wacky theory that you told me. I don't think it's true. Basically, like Q might be the humans in the future.
Oh yes, I do remember that. Yes,
because there's a moment where Picard quotes Shakespeare, and I won't copy it because he does a fantastic job. And Patrick Stewart is a Shakespearean actor.
Actor, of course, yeah.
So I'm not gonna even give it a shot.
Right.
But I might try the voice. And he goes like, he quotes Hamlet specifically, is like talking about humanity and humanity becoming a god. And Q is like, well, surely you don't see yourself becoming like that, do you? It's like, one day I do see us. And Q like throws this ginormous Shakespeare book, like you could smack a bitch with it. I'm sorry. I'm not. And he catches it, and Picard just catches it. He's like, one day I do see us becoming that. It's a theory that I do remember. Yeah. I don't think it's true because I don't know. It'd be a bit of a cop out, I feel, personally.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, I remember bringing that up. Yeah, I think that's the whole reason like Q's there. It's like just to test him. He's like, went through the history books and like, okay, this is where we need to like jump in when humanity becomes a spacefaring race and like, put them to the ultimate test.
Because they can time travel, they can destroy things, they can make them reappear.
Yes, and referring to the Q. Of course.
They're known as they're called Q, but they're essentially a collection of beings that are nearly godlike. Yeah. Essentially, they can literally think or do whatever they want to,
make whatever they want. Yeah,
like in Voyager they go a lot deeper with the Q lore and everything, so that's why I think the theory doesn't add up. But we have had like over 800 episodes of Star Trek. I'm not surprised if they're going to change it up later.
Of course, right. Another one of my episodes with Q in it is the one where he becomes human.
Oh yeah,
because like he fucks up. I think he was trying to get Riker to become one of them and entice him in a previous episode. Earlier episode. Yeah, and then it didn't work because Picard's like, you know,
it's like he knows his crew.
Right?
And one thing that's really cool is that they don't tell you that I really wish they did in the show, and that they do tell you the autobiography. As one reads, and is that he actually handpicked his entire crew except for Riker. And when I say handpicked, I mean he knew them.
Right. Okay.
He knew them. I think he knew Troy a decent amount, but he knew all of them before he got his command. And so he had researched Riker, and he picked Riker, but he didn't know him personally.
Makes sense because when he first was brought on, he interviews him and is like,
right,
yeah.
And that makes that episode so much more important.
Yeah, they should bring that up. Yeah,
I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah.
Either it got cut on the floor when they were in the writer's room, or they just cleaned it up later. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he already has an established understanding with a lot of the characters except for Riker. So I thought that was cool.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
but with the Q episode when he becomes human, I had to bring it up because it's so funny. Like, there's one instance where they have him locked in the brig or whatever. And Picard goes down to talk to him.
He's wearing that gray jumpsuit.
Yeah, he has that gray jumpsuit on. And he's like, "Oh, Picard, thank God you're here. It was so terrible. Like, I all of a sudden became very faint. And, like, my head started to hurt. And I kept blinking. I had to yawn. And I kept yawning and all this time. And I just lost consciousness." And he's like, Q, you just became sleepy." Because he has no idea what sleep is. He's never had to sleep before. It's so funny. Just little stuff like that. The acting, like, so great.
You can just tell that, like, Picard is like, I don't have time for this shit.
Right. You took a nap.
He's like, this is kid stuff. Like, literally kid stuff.
Yeah. He's like, you could not handle being human for it.
Like, my God.
And then him getting hungry and all that stuff too. Like, it's so
I'll
hilarious.
have 10 chocolate sundaes or something.
Yes, like yes. Isn't Guinan in the episode too?
Yeah. Oh,
she's in that, right?
Because they pointed the lore about it.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, he's like, it's such a chilling turn for her because Guinan is very someone who keeps their anger with short reins so that she can control it very well. She's an Al-Aurian, and essentially, like, I'm trying to keep a good balance of not divesting so much lore, but I'm just gonna go for it. Essentially, like, the Al-Aurians are disbanded by one of Star Trek's biggest villains, the Borg. But they are so old that they have had run-ins with the Continuum, so much so that there was a war at one point. And that Q is actually, like, if he had hair in the back of his head, it would stick up. Yeah. Every time he sees her.
We see him press, for the first time.
He's like, you have no idea who you have on your ship. And they never explain it. Even in Picard, they just dance around it.
Wow.
They just dance around it. So I feel like that's something they can bring up later. But yeah, there's a chilling part, and this is a spoiler. She, like, sneakily grabs a fork and then just fucking stabs him. And it doesn't stick in and everything, but, like, you see Q recoil in pain.
Yes.
And she's like, how pitiable that you are reduced to being something that you love to toy with. Mortal. There are a lot of good scenes of just straight up acting in this show. Yeah. There really are, and it's unfortunate it gets mired into, like, oh, this is nerdy.
No, it's much more deep than that.
It is much more deep than that. Like, is it goofy and is it campy as fuck? Of course it is. That's why I like it. Yeah. That's why we like it.
Of course. Yeah, but it's not just all just pum 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 explosions, like.
Yeah, there's that and there's more.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of philosophical, like, questions, exactly.
Like, there's even one that I watch every once in a while, which is the guy from MASH who plays one of the later doctors.
Oh, yeah.
David Ogden Stiers.
Yes.
They call the Federation for help, and they send the flagship, which is the Enterprise, and they have to reignite their sun. Yeah. And they're not xenophobic. Well, no, they are xenophobic, but they're reaching out because they have no other option. And Timison is his name, and he's the lead scientist that can help them understand, like, how to reignite the sun by using photon torpedoes and et cetera, et cetera. You find out that, like, after the first trial or the second trial or something like that, early on, that he's, like, starts, like, becoming very emotional, and you're, like, wondering, well, what's wrong? You can just try again. Right. What's the problem? Honestly, I think this is a great Luxwana episode too.
Yeah.
Honestly, because you get to see a lot of her other side instead of her just being kind of annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Roddenberry's wife was thrown into Next Generation. She's the lady of Star Trek, Majel Barrett, and she is the voice of the computer. Yeah. And she's Troy's mom. And so Troy and Timison fall in love. The reason why Timison is freaking out is because he is about to go home to commit ritual suicide. Because he's reached the age.
That's right, I remember that.
He's reached the age of the ritual, apparently they had a past where they were short on supplies and resources and didn't want to take care of the elderly. They couldn't take care of the elderly. So the society agreed at a certain point that they would just commit suicide and die when what they refer to as die with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode doesn't really give you an answer. They give two sides of the coin. You could live much longer, but then there's this whole idea of when we're talking about tolerance and compromise, like, well, the tolerance of like, you can't base your own opinions on someone else's established culture.
Exactly.
It's unfair.
Yeah.
It might be wrong, but you have to realize that they are entrenched with this, and this means a lot to them.
Mm-hmm.
The episode does a great job of talking about the pros and cons of pushing this further, because it puts Picard in a big spot. It puts the Federation in a big spot.
Interferes with the Prime Directive.
Which, yeah, and to give you basically the Prime Directive is just a way that like people who are less advanced, like how do we interact with them, and what do we do, and the thing is, if they followed the Prime Directive all the time, then they would never have any episodes of Star Trek.
Exactly. They have to bend the rules, of course, a lot of the times.
For it to have a show. Any other episodes that kind of stick out to you? Or any acting sessions that stick out to you?
There is the episode, and we talked about it not too long ago, the episode where they thaw a bunch of rich humans.
We're laughing because they're all white, which is not which is not the thing, but it's just the way that it's like, okay, all right, and then the three distinct character differences.
They're very like stereotypical of like the late 80s, 90s like white people you would see on Earth.
Right, which is just so goofy.
You have the rich like country cowboy tycoon
who like is your best friend to just chill with.
Oh yeah. He was the most chill out of everybody.
Out of all of them.
He was just up and ready to go after they unfroze him.
He's like, yeah, man, give me a banjo and let's get out of here.
Yes. You have the entitled rich white guy who's into stocks and all this stuff and like, wants everyone to like bend to his will.
Think Gordon Gekko, but worse, but quieter at the same time.
Yeah,
like more conniving, I would think.
Yeah,
in a quiet way. And then you have, I guess I don't know if she's from the Midwest, but she's like a homemaker. And they all die. One of them was expectedly because he knew he had cancer. The country singer,
country guy, yeah,
knew he had liver cancer. I think the homemaker died of, it was a car crash or a heart attack,
something like that. Yeah,
and then I think the other guy had some disease that I don't remember.
They didn't have a cure for, or something. I don't know.
They didn't have the cure at the time.
At the time, that's what it was. Yeah, because I remember you might have like a dialogue with the doctor about like, yeah, we got this.
He's like, yeah, we got it taken care of. And like medical technology in their generation is astounding. You just basically like use a fucking wand.
Oh yeah,
and you're done.
Scans are what's wrong with you? Okay, and then press the button and then fix.
Like the dermal healers, which is basically like if you create an incision, you can just like scan it and it will tell your body to like rapidly heal. The technology in Star Trek is unsurpassed when it comes to stuff like that at that point.
But the episode's hilarious because you have the rich guy who's like he was all about his stocks and back in the day, and like Picard's like, fool, we don't deal with money in the stock market anymore. Like all that means nothing. Yeah, and
he's like, well, what about my office? He's like, it probably doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Honestly.
Right. And the entire time he's just being a dick. He wants everyone to like cater to him and like talking to Picard like he's just a servant.
You know, I'm glad you bring this up because there's even a point where he uses the comm because he sees Riker use the comm to contact somebody. And he's like, why are you using the comm? You're not authorized to use that. He's like, well, it was available to me. He's like, but you can't practice normal human restraint.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so subtle.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. It's like you don't have the privilege to do anything you want. Like
we've given you great accommodations. You have anything you want, you can get. Just chill. We got to handle an emergency. We'll be right back to you.
Yeah.
And we know this is a lot. They probably could have onboarded them a little better.
Sure.
But chill.
Yeah.
Chill the fuck out, dog.
I'm sure you have like there's a supercomputer on board.
Yeah.
Catch up on what you missed up on.
You can literally like chat GPT your way back to the
exactly
the century.
Exactly.
And like even with that joke, that's one of the reasons I love Star Trek and TNGs because they even have a specific episode and many themes of the show. For one, it shows how technology can further us instead of control us. And it also has a specific episode where they get caught in an old asteroid belt of a relic of an old war where they get trapped. And their ship starts to break down, and the only way we can get out is by using the computer to get out. And I'm like, the computer can only take things that we tell it and do it faster.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't take away our human ingenuity, intuition,
instinct,
and what have you. Now, sure, may technology catch up to that? I can't say no to that.
Yeah,
I can't say no.
Which something they propose with Data, I guess, in a sense. Yeah,
and they do, and like his creator was fucking close.
Yeah,
fucking close. Like, and that's one of the beautiful things about Data. Is that he is constantly walking so close to it every time. And it's so heartwarming to see him just try. Even though he knows he'll never get there, he tries and gets further and further every time in his own way. He says this beautiful thing to his daughter, Lal, which is apparently a Sanskrit word, which means like beloved.
Oh, yeah.
They have random references to India throughout the show. There's a section of the stars called Chandra 4.
Yeah.
Khan, Noonien, and Singh are all very North Indian names, even though they're played by white people. But,
right, well, you know.
Go figure.
As you know, what can you do?
As you do. As one does. They mentioned Diwali.
Oh, yeah.
On the episode of Data's Day, which is one of my favorite episodes.
That's a good episode, yeah.
Yeah, like he just randomly mentions, like, today's the Hindu celebration of lights.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, what? Are we not going to show any of it?
Right.
And they don't. But still,
oh man,
there's just a lot of really good parts like that.
Another reason why I like The Next Generation is kind of like how they updated the aesthetics from the original Star Trek. Again, I'm not hating on the original Star Trek, but like in terms of like the set design and the costumes at the time,
they had no budget.
Yeah, but they made it work, and I'm okay with that. I'm just grateful because we got The Next Generation,
exactly,
and, all the great stuff now.
It's also part of the reasons why the Klingons look different. But anyhow,
yeah. But at the time in the '90s, seeing the modernization of like their uniforms, which were kind of like they kind of pay homage to the old ones, but like had their own like
they change up the colors, but for the most part, they keep a scheme of colors.
Yes, yes. The way they interface with the technology, everything's like a touch screen, which is nice and sleek. No, like just flashing random Christmas lights in the background of the original set. But I enjoyed the updated look of everything, and you could just, of course, you could talk to the computer just by voice control stuff, which is something we can do now with a lot of smart speakers.
Something we can do now.
Predictive. And like them using the phasers, of course, which is still came over from the original, but like instead of like guns, like they would phase you to go to sleep. Like basically, like they didn't kill you.
Like there's a stun setting, there's a kill setting.
There's a kill setting, but most of the time they're just scanning people like get sleepy.
Yeah, and like there are other ways to do that. Like, and I think to have that technology, you would have to have something that could heat up to like billions of degrees to make sure that it wouldn't kill the person.
Yeah.
Or something crazy like that. I don't know. Talk to a scientist.
Right, exactly.
I'm a podcaster. Leave me alone.
They didn't have they didn't have guns. It was like a remote.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Do a good job of that. Do you have any other themes you want to talk about before we talk about our like favorite episodes?
So I know we love this show because of the Utopia, but also to play devil's advocate.
No, please, yeah.
For all the problems we saw.
You should have seen his like eyebrows and smirk that came with that. It was clutch.
You know, for all the strides we make with humans on Earth in the future, we go out in space and it's like, oh, there's still war, there's still poverty, and all this other stuff across the universe, which is a bigger concept, I guess, for people. If people on other planets exist, they all are still going through their various stages as well of like coming up.
If they're even like us. Like,
even if they're like us,
like,
right.
For the sake of Star Trek, like if you think of aliens, there's a lot of different images that come through people's head.
Mm-hmm.
We often think of like little green creatures with like round faces and everything. That's still very human-like though.
Yeah, exactly.
It still has bipedal, it still has 2 arms, 2 legs of some sort, a head of some sort. And that is the majority of Star Trek aliens, because I mean, how else do you have a fucking show?
Exactly right.
But like, sometimes they also do like just a cloud of mist could be an alien, an entity that has like life. Yeah. But you also got to consider like that is not the only extent of aliens. Like aliens are completely something that we probably can't even comprehend at this point.
Yes.
So that is one fact I wanted to say before we go out. But go ahead, devil's advocate.
Yeah. The problems that we have supposedly conquered on Earth, we still have to conquer again.
Yeah,
in a sense.
And so that's where how I answer that is basically like it is a way to reflect what's going on now.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of situations that they talk about where I mean, you can definitely tell this is the 80s when they had a drug episode in the first.
Yeah.
The random. And apparently Lower Decks followed up on this.
That's hilarious.
Which is even better. And the animated show where like Star Trek and the Next Generation basically had a baby, and that's called Lower Decks.
Yeah.
If you have not seen anything, it is very self-referential to like Star Trek, but there are just some goofy parts in it too.
It's kind of like, it has a Rick and Morty aesthetic.
It's done by, I think, part of the team.
Okay, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how that happened. So it's a way to reflect to today, like the drug problem that was going on in the Say No to Drugs, which is, we have reaped not great things from that at that point.
It failed.
It 100% failed. Like Dare completely failed. I still remember the song they made us sing for that
poor
show.
line we tried to.
Yeah, it's a shame because that was a cute line.
Yeah,
it really was a cute line. They have an episode where they were talking about like what it was like to do drugs consistently. They're actually explaining it to Wesley because he comes from a time where there's no need for that,
right? Or
at least like it's not widespreadly done. And Tasha is an interesting character because, and I wish she got more time. You find out a lot about her when like later on when stuff happens. Mm-hmm. But essentially they were a group of humans that went off to a planet, and then they were like, fuck it, let's make this Mad Max. Yep. They said to the Federation, leave us the fuck alone. Uh-huh. And so to paint you a picture, Tasha has horrible trauma from that time. Mm-hmm. Her parents were killed, and she makes only mention of the rape gangs that she had to avoid. Oof. Which just makes everyone kind of like sit up straight in their chair.
Yeah.
After hearing that.
Yeah.
There's a chilling scene where like they have a weird like time paradox go on. Mm-hmm. And essentially like thoughts become semi-reality.
Reality, yeah. I remember that.
And I know this is getting a bit granular, but comes a point where they get into an issue where, like I just said, like whatever thoughts or memories you have temporarily be like surround you. Mm-hmm. And so some are very sweet and some are very scary. And they show a clip of a gang approaching Tasha. Yeah. And like it's very war, come out and play, Tasha.
Yeah, oh my God.
And it's just like so very creepy. And then like it stops and she kind of just is like shaking a little bit. Mm-hmm. And they ask Tasha, "Are you fine?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." Right. And it just makes you think like, oh my God, like her life before the Federation must have been horrible. Mm-hmm. So my thing is like, it's our way to reflect current day problems.
Exactly.
That's why long explanation to answer that.
Right. They had to represent some of that in the show.
Right. And I think if we did something akin to TNG, like that's how it would have to be today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of those different beings, I remember there was the episode where Deanna is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She's impregnated by that ball of light.
It's a ball. Like they don't really. It was earlier on. Yeah.
So basically, yeah, she's impregnated by this ball of light, and she's all of a sudden pregnant, and she has a child, and everyone's like, "Well, how? This is crazy. It's almost like immaculate conception, of course, right? You know." And she has this child, and the child grows at a like crazy exponential rate or whatever. And
lives in a day, I think, or something.
Yeah. And basically, the long story is the being just wanted to know what it was like to be human.
Yeah, essentially, we wanted to know what it was like to be human. Now, granted, you could say that there was not a whole lot of consent that happened with this.
Yeah, I always felt weird about that. Yeah. I was like, just boop, I'm inside you now.
Now I'm like 6 months pregnant after being pregnant, like not being pregnant yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a way of that being understanding what it meant to be human. And I think that part of it was very beautiful.
Yeah.
And there was a very specific scene that I remember where Worf is always the voice of security because he essentially takes that role after Tasha dies. And he goes like, well, we could abort the fetus and everything. And Deanna steps in because she's an empath. She's a betazoid. She's half betazoid. She can read minds and she's telepathic and whatnot. That's why she's the ship counselor. And she goes, make whatever decision you want, but know that I will carry this child to term.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. Like, it's really cool to see issues of gender, sexuality, reproductive rights, even though they're not done as well as they could be.
Yeah.
We're still done in the 80s. And there's things that we're revisiting today.
That's huge, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. There's a specific episode where, like, it's super woke. I hate saying that. But it's super progressive to the point where, like, Data creates his daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
Or creates his child, I'll say. And he's like, I wanted my child to choose their own identity. Mm-hmm. So he lets them do that.
I didn't trip off that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just lightly just peppered in there.
Peppered in, like I said, this is a production of basically a hippie.
Yeah.
So and it follows through.
Yeah.
The hippies got a lot of things right. Inclusivity, understanding, trans rights and gender understanding has been with us since we could writing things down.
Yeah.
Multiple societies had them. India has the hijras. Other people have different parts of them. What I've heard of colonizers, when they come in, they saw how well regarded they were. Mm-hmm. Spiritually, socially, and everything. And so then it was like, no, there's only two genders. And then that's what really started a lot of the hate that we still are recovering from today.
That's deep, man.
Thank you. I've been holding that in for a long time. Just that concept.
Gotcha.
That's one of the reasons I love the show, is because it really touched on a lot of these things that we are just broaching again today.
Yeah.
There's this great, you seen Honest Trailers?
Oh, yes. I love it. Yeah.
So they did one, and they're like, and it's super woke.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What else do you love about it, man?
Oh, well, I guess another thing. Basically, the Star Trek The Next Generation also it revitalized Star Trek.
Yeah.
Which is why we have so many great shows today.
If it wasn't for TNG, we would not have any of the shows that came after.
No Voyager, no Deep Space Nine.
Oh, God, Deep Space Nine.
That was a slap.
Yeah.
It was dark, but it was a slap. I love it.
It takes everything we said today and let's run it through the blender.
Yeah.
Let's see how this works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We got the Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, which people give that a lot of hate.
I need to give it a second shot, honestly.
I love it.
It had some cool things that happened in it.
It almost seems like it was happier than The Next Generation, now that I think about it, in a way. And maybe it's the theme song. It's been a long time getting from there to here.
Oh, man, that was good.
It's been a long time, but my time is finally here. I love that song. I can reach the sky. But yeah, Archer, Captain Archer. Oh yes, but I like it. It felt more campy than The Next Generation.
It definitely could, doesn't
it?
Yeah. Like it from clips and episodes I've seen of it, it definitely was campy because they had to be like, we're making the Federation out of this. Like we have warp 3 or 4 at this point.
Yeah,
we barely have a functioning transporter, and I mean barely. Like right. No one trusts it. Keep in mind that like the moment Next Gen pops around, the Federation has been around for at least 2 centuries, a century and a half,
right?
Something like that.
Because it's the golden era.
I always forget the years, but it's from current day. It's like 300 or 400 years from the Federation.
Okay,
it's like maybe 100 years, 100 or 200 years, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, because of that, all the other shows show up.
So. Yeah. Enterprise, and then we got Discovery.
Yeah. Strange New Worlds, which is a bit of a backstep.
Strange New Worlds
in time, but also really good. Honestly, yeah. I feel it's some of the best Star Trek that's out there right now.
Oh yeah, and of course Picard, which I'm catching up on.
It's good. I like Picard. I definitely enjoyed it. Like my nerd heart was very nurtured. I wish that, and this is one thing I want to bring up that I'm glad I remembered. It was not the bottled episodes that we saw in Next Gen, because that's what I love about Next Gen too. Is like you could pick up any episode, any season, and you could watch it with anybody, and they would enjoy it.
Right. You know the characters, okay, boom, but the plot didn't necessarily have to be like a continuous thing, which a lot of TV shows now is like a continuous.
It's a very plot heavy world that we live in.
Yeah.
And I understand that's why Terry Matalas probably wrote it that way, or like the production crew was like, we can't do bottled episodes. We can't do one-offs. Like it's just not going to work in today's society. And I disagree with it.
Yeah, same here.
I think there's much value in doing those one-offs, but
because there's themes you can explore, like regardless, it doesn't have to be a continuous narrative, but
you can have a narrative as the B story, like that's right. Like if you have to flip everything for that to happen,
right? Because in Next Generation, you still they always did so many callbacks, and so callbacks it's possible
to this and that, and like it went out for 7 seasons, and they did a ton of callbacks throughout the show. You can do it. I really wish they should bring it back. I understand why they didn't, but
yeah. So and we also forgot to mention all the movies.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a shit ton of movies.
There's a lot of movies
that you can watch as well.
If they have the original cast in it, the even numbers are really good.
Yeah.
Like any of the The Next Generation ones, like, there's one that's really good, and then another one that was like, I love how, pun intended, down to earth the cast is about them. They're like, even Patrick Stewart was like, yeah, we did Insurrection, which was the last time I played Picard, and that was just weird.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad you said
like, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, that didn't work out the way we wanted to.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what aesthetic they were going for, and then I think at the time it was made, I'm not getting my times right, but maybe it was like Independence Day or like Alien movies and stuff. Right?
Yeah, and like the uniforms had all changed, and it was just like weird.
Yeah,
weird.
Mm-hmm. It's like, wait, why are you wearing this now? I know there's no. Yeah,
the Star Trek uniforms they've given no explanation for, as far as I know. I don't like. No one knows how to read the star dates or the uniforms because there's a section like that's set after the original, like after Kirk's voyage. 5-year voyage, and then everyone's just wearing red.
Yeah.
And they never explain it. They don't tell us why. They don't even talk about it.
That was stressful because I'm like, so is everyone capable of dying? Like, is that what's going on?
Well, right, like the red shirt trope. Yeah. I was like, what is happening here? Like, what is going on? And I don't know if Lower Decks ever explores it. Because that's an episode that they could totally reference for.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, there was a lot of weird choices that they did, and so granted, like, the cast is old. They're in their 70s and 60s now. Like, it's hard to say. I think Patrick Stewart's in his 80s. In fact. So this is insane.
Wow, man.
And he's still a great actor.
Yeah.
I love that there was a bottled episode. You could pick it up. I love the silent hum of the warp drive.
Hell yes.
The silent hum of the impulse engine that was just in the background. And you can go on YouTube and turn it on for 4 hours.
I would go straight to the bar on the ship. I would give you some drinks, sit back, look out the window, and take frequent naps on that ship.
Oh, man. That's the beautiful thing about it. Like 10 Forward, which was like the lounge they had. Dude, I want to say this before I forget. I was going to say it at the end, but I'm just going to say it now because I feel it. I love watching Star Trek with you. And
awesome.
I'm so glad you get it. I'm so glad that you like it. I'm getting emotional just talking like that. And I'll announce it now. You want to announce it now?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to plan on watching the entire series, The Next Generation, and live viewing it up on YouTube.
So we don't get canned for copyright infringement. We're just going to show like us and our reactions to it.
It's going to be a Let's Watch. So.
It's going to be a Let's Watch. We'll get you guys more info about that TBD, but because specifically we were trying to find Michael Dorn.
Exactly.
We were trying to find the episode where Michael Dorn is jumping, like does a fucking like video game double jump.
Yes.
Like double leg bicycle Jackie Chan jump over
a banister in the bridge.
And we it took us 5 hours.
Yes.
And then the one episode that it did have it, Paramount Plus couldn't play it.
That was crazy.
It was like bullshit. And then you pulled it up on your phone and we caught it then.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, I should probably go home now.
Yes.
Because it's like 12:30.
we could not rest until we found it.
We started. We did not, and we had a lot of fun doing that, and we're gonna do it again. So we're gonna definitely goof around and give a very similar vibe to this episode for that. But
for sure.
So yeah, I love that you could just pick up any episode and you could do the dishes, you could do laundry, and it's like even just talking about it, I'm calming down.
Yeah.
It's because like it's interesting when you get older, you look at things that you've grown up with through different eyes.
That's true. Yeah.
I really appreciate the leadership that Picard does. I really appreciate the back and forth that they have with certain characters. I love, and I think this is how it works, is I feel like Roddenberry, this was a big problem. The reason why he fired a bunch of people is because he was like, no, this is Utopia. You can't have any conflict.
And it's like,
right.
No,
and Sid's face was priceless just then. This is like, what the fuck? You, as a writer, you've cut my legs underneath me.
Exactly.
Like, what do I do? And I think it works like this. You have the ideals of the Federation. You do your damn best to follow through with them. Now, granted, in DS9, they do it where it's like outside of the Federation.
Right.
Or on the border of it, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Whereas, like, if you had a show that was within the Federation or, like, Federation, like, it's similar to how TNG was set up. It's like, we're going to do our absolute best, and when we fail, we're going to address it.
Exactly.
And we're going to do our best to, like, because there's a beautiful moment that I have saved on my favorites list is when Data's put in charge.
Yeah.
And Worf gets upset about something, and he makes it super weird and very uncommon for Data to like address it right away. Well, rare, I'll say. It's rare for him to address it. He says whatever he needs to, and then he's like, Commander Worf, I'd like to see you in my ready room. So he pulls him aside. He's like, I am dissatisfied with your performance. And he like, in a very level-headed way, but stern, like goes like, you are undercutting me every time I make a command. And Worf's like, well, you know, I was just trying to give my like security things. He's like, that's true when you were the security council officer, but right now you are acting first officer, and I need you on my side. And if it's an absolute problem that you cannot avoid telling me, do not undercut me in front of everybody.
Wow. And
it's a very beautiful way of, well, actually, let me tell the rest of it, because there's a part where he's about to leave and Data's like, Mr. Worf. He's like, Worf turns around and is like, I'm sorry if I've ended our friendship.
Wow.
And Worf, you can tell like it's like a quick punch to Worf where he goes like, right? I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills all over the place. I changed my shirt after this. Worf goes like, you know, I am the one who should be apologizing. And it's a very like Worf Data relationship where he's like, if you are willing to overlook this assumption and problem, I would like to continue our friendship. Right. That's the worst Worf impression I've heard. But regardless, there's a lot of intricacies in relationships and how people interact with each other. And I think that's beautiful. Whenever I was taking DVT classes, everyone around the table was like, why the fuck didn't we learn this in high school?
It would have been helpful. So helpful. Like, even if you weren't good at it, it's like, okay, well, how do I approach this with a coworker? How do I approach this with a family member? They've gotten rid of a lot of character education.
Yeah.
So that's
true. That's true. But it's something that would be incredibly helpful.
Yes.
And then like you don't even have to be best friends with someone who you have a conflict with. You just have to be able to work through it.
Right. And continue to move forward and not have any animosity towards that person.
Right. Like Pulaski leaving was the interim doctor when Gates McFadden got fired for standing up for herself, essentially. One thing I will appreciate about her is that she was a great doctor, but she was kind of annoying to have on there.
Yeah.
Her acting was fine.
Yeah.
But just her character was annoying.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it, but something like, this doesn't feel right.
It just didn't mesh. And she even said at one point, she's like, I just don't fit in here, and I'm just gonna leave. She's like, I need to do what's best for me and for the crew.
Right.
So I'm just gonna find a different assignment.
Yeah.
She also was in the original series, so just kind of just kind of nuts. Yeah. She's still kicking, last I heard.
Nice.
But, so that's a lot of the things that I love from this.
Oh, the Borg. We didn't talk about the Borg.
We didn't really talk about the Borg, and that's a beautiful part. Well, we can talk about it briefly.
Yeah, the Borg is that collective of computer mixed with like biological beings. Basically, it's a hive mind, and their only purpose in the galaxy is to assimilate everything to become Borg.
They were the species that basically caused like Guinan's people to get fragmented.
Yeah,
like that's how powerful they were. To this day, whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, you know, they got to come into our society and assimilate," I always cringe because every time I hear that, I'm like, "Okay, like, can we say integrate?"
Yeah,
because assimilate sounds way too Borgy to me.
We want to be together, not the same.
Right, like it's because integrate, like, okay, yeah, sure, like I don't speak Hindi or Punjabi or Kerala or Farsi, but I speak English. But I still carry a lot of the sentiments my parents have. I still have a lot of the cultural aspects of being from where my family's from. I've integrated into society. I've basically added my own flavor to society.
Right.
If it ever allows it every once in a while. But when it does, it does. And I haven't assimilated, because if I'm fully assimilated, then you got to change my genetic structure at the same time.
Exactly.
So whenever I hear people say loosely, like throw around the term assimilate, I'm like, you don't know what that means. Yeah. And it's because of the Borg.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that.
Exactly. You don't want that.
Yeah, they're one of Star Trek's best villains. And they have a big presence later on. They're very interesting.
Yeah.
They're a very interesting villain.
And it's funny, from a kid watching the Borg, I'm like, oh man, these are some scary looking guys with all the wires and stuff hanging out.
Yeah.
But as I grow up, I'm like, Some budget issues, maybe. Like, is why they got these outfits. But the premise and the principle of what they are, like, still is like a scary concept. Yeah,
it's terrifying. Like that robot voice every time it comes on.
Oh yeah,
you just see a fucking cube in space.
Yes.
Like if you are a motherfucking cube in space.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run away.
Yes,
because that's weird.
When I first started watching Picard and you see that they're on the ship, the Borg ship, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm freaking out. Like, what are you doing? Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck right now!
Run the fuck away!
Like I have PTSD.
Oh man, that's actually really cute. I like that. That's actually really cute. I'm glad you brought them up because they're one of Star Trek's like best parts of it. Honestly.
Oh yeah.
And the way that the Federation reacts to the Borg is really interesting too.
Yeah.
Romulans are there, Vulcans are there, Klingons are definitely there. Klingons, they butt heads with a lot, and they delve more. Like every once in a while, it's kind of like the Katy Perry song. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're enemies.
Yeah.
But they have some great episodes in TNG as well, specifically with like just how Klingon politics work.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's the episode where they switch officers from like the
exchange program.
The exchange program, yeah. And Riker's on,
Riker actually does like a good job.
Mm-hmm. Kicks one of the the officers on board's ass, kicks their ass,
yeah,
and then gets the eye of the women on the ship, which is hilarious.
Because Baby Frakes is going to do all that stuff.
Of course.
Johnny Frakes is going to do all that stuff. Yeah.
Of course. And then
William Riker's going to do all that stuff.
Johnny Frakes. Yeah.
Johnny Frakes.
Johnny Frakes.
I mean, same person, but still. Yeah.
Right. But they also like realize that, oh yeah, we're not different from each other. And that's another, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they even have a beautiful episode about that. That evolves into one of my favorite episodes called The Chase. And you find out that, this is a big spoiler, but like you find out that there was an ancient race by billions of years ago that saw that realized that they were not going to last forever. So what they did was actually encode their DNA into other humanoid DNAs that were already sprouting up,
right?
Putting their own water in some of the clay that was there, essentially. And so then because of that, all of the villains and people that the Federation has encountered that are humanoid-like are related, very, very distantly. And they may have accelerated and been, progressed at different paces, but they're all related.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful episode. It's really like high sci-fi lore episode. People call that lazy writing. I don't.
Yeah.
Because I think the point was different. The point was to show togetherness. Honestly.
Exactly.
And I really love that. And that really echoes to today in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
If you trace it back far enough, it's always back to Africa.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And don't let me say this. Please say this.
Yeah, it's just all humans are related to that common ancestor that was a black woman in the heart of Africa.
Yeah,
it's everyone knows. Science knows it, and yeah, it ties in with that episode.
Like there's too many things in the African continent. Even parts like the way Tamil sounds way too much like early clicking languages.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of shit that I'm like, this is very similar.
Yep,
very similar. The Dravidians, they were known to have darker skin and everything. And so like you can't tell me that's not related.
Yeah, we all came out of there.
Yeah. That's what I love about it too. I think it's amazing when fiction is a mirror for what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made TNG so cool in that way. So then episodes I really love that everyone should check out. Data's Day, which is just like, hop, skip, and a jump. The inner monologue is done by Data the entire time. Even though it kind of has a sour moment where something happens with the Romulans and stuff. Yeah. It does end very well. And Measure of a Man, another great, amazing Data episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you actually get to see Picard slap on the lawyer role and defend one of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the very interesting task of having they had to force Riker to be opposing counsel because he was just like, they needed a senior officer who was present.
Mm-hmm.
And if he didn't, then they would rule summarily to deconstruct Data and create more of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're taking my boy apart? He's a person, damn it.
He is. And there's a great speech by Picard by it too. My God. The Hunted, really good episode. Basically, it's this society that reached the same level of the early Federation. and they abhor war, but they created a bunch of people psychologically and physiologically and made them weapons of war, and then basically shoved them onto a colony. When they got too violent, they just like threw them aside.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Dude, it's one of my favorite episodes.
Nice.
Yeah, and a lot of really interesting things of like, you didn't even try to help them. Like there's, and again, classic line by Picard going, "They're your brothers, your sisters, and you just cast them aside and throw them away?
Yes.
How dare you?" And the way he fucking leaves, oh my god, he's like fucking is like, "You guys can deal with this." Yeah. Love this episode where it was like they talk about this empire that predates the Federation, but basically was an early version of the Federation where it was called the Takan Empire. They went around this like galaxies, established like trade routes and understanding, and were friends with a bunch of people. And then unfortunately, like every big empire, they fractured and fell. They don't exactly say what happened, but they had the capability, which is astounding to me, to take 7 suns and put them around each other. How the fuck do you do that?
It's symbolic of a lot of the early civilizations and like how we see them do things, have done things, and we still have no idea how the pyramids were made.
Dude, that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yes.
Yeah, like
we have there were countries that sailed around the world before Columbus.
China had the treasure fleets. I go on and on about that to everyone I meet. I've told you about that. Like they had, if you want to take, for example, like say you're on a kitchen table and you have, I don't know, a potter pan. Like the size of Columbus's ship is that potter pan.
Right.
The Chinese treasure fleet was the size of the table.
Exactly.
Roughly 3 times the size of the Pinta, the Santa Maria, and the third ship that I'm blanking on right now.
Yeah.
And they sailed all around. It went on for decades. And then they just burned all of the ships because they were like, it's too expensive.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right?
That's so crazy.
They had farms, crops. They were called cities on the sea. They were ridiculous.
Wow.
And they just like, oh, like, you know what? We're good.
Yeah.
Like they went all the way to Arabia.
That's wild.
Isn't that ridiculous? Like we're finding maps. I was talking to my brother. We're finding maps that are thousands of years old that have Antarctica written on them.
Yeah, and it's like,
how do you know that's there? That makes no sense. What are you doing? What have you done that shows that?
Exactly.
There's like, if you go to India, it's a great example. There's this big ass pillar, and I've seen it. It's done in 3 sections. So first of all, it's a marvel in terms of like, sure, okay, we had math, we had the capability, we had labor force, we could do it.
Sure.
But the way it's smelted makes no sense. You would need radiation to the levels of like uranium to do it.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Yeah. It's hard for modern tools to replicate such things.
Like even like you have to remember that ancient societies, if they're where they are, if they're a combined society, they had archaeology. The Egyptians had archaeologists. Yeah. So let that sink in your mind for a while.
Exactly.
Like, what have we lost from that time that they were talking about?
The stone, like the carved churches in Ethiopia that are in the ground.
Oh, yes. I think I heard about that.
Yes, they're like 90-degree angles, gigantic churches, cathedrals in the ground. Before any type of modern tools.
They have like perfect circles or something.
Perfect circles, perfect lines.
That's wild.
And it's like, how?
Yeah, how like, what have we lost that was done that? Now some people throw in like, oh, it was all aliens. I'm like, some of it might be. I'm not going to say it's not. But we also just throw away any kind of human ingenuity.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about Star Trek. I know you guys are sick and tired of me saying that shit, but that's why I love it. Yeah. So the Khan Empire, the Iconian episode where you find out that there were people that could travel by walking through a door and go like on the other side of the galaxy. Yeah. And how those languages actually formed other languages. So it's like looking at Sanskrit and seeing how it shows up in the Philippines, in Indo-European lineages. It shows up in parts of Latin. People don't realize that. Like it's weird. It's really weird. There's a really heartwarming episode where you find a race of people that are, I call it the space baby episode, where essentially these creatures that are just roam around in space and they're biological beings. Yeah. And they encounter them, and it's just really, it kind of expands your mind to be like, there is the possibility of things like living in space without being on a planet, which is nuts.
Yeah.
The Borg episodes, like we talked about. Oh, this one. This one is a big one. The Drumhead.
Oh, yeah.
This is big. So I actually got a cameo by the guy who Simon Tarsa's.
Mm-hmm.
You know the dude?
Yeah.
I got a cameo from him because it was the year after the pandemic, I think. Or it was during the pandemic, one of the two. And I asked him, like, hey, man, because I was trying to see if Picard was on there, and he wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, fuck it. I was like, well, I found this guy. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
And so I asked him, like, hey, man, do you mind telling me about your time on Next Generation? Dude was super nice. Like, took his time. Like, gave me like a 10 or 15 minute cameo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like, he kind of smiled and says, like, you know what? I have like 300 different acting credits. I've traveled all around the world. And every time I travel or any time I run into a fan, everybody asks me about the Drumhead. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so it's a great episode talking about like spreading fear in the name of righteousness. Essentially, I don't want to give away too much of the episode because it's just done beautifully. Like the music's beautiful. Picard,
watch that one.
Picard kicks ass in it. Honestly, he stands up for truly what is justice in that episode, and it's an episode I play over and over and over. And even the actress that plays Admiral Sati does a great job too. But yeah, when I got the cameo from the guy. Do you remember, what can you tell me from that time? What do you remember? What do you like? He's like, I loved my scenes with Patrick Stewart.
Oh,
and I was like, yes! And there's that moment where he's talking to Simon Tarsus to just get to know him a little more. To be like, tell me about yourself. I want to defend you. Like what's going on?
Right.
And apparently they had shot the scene and he didn't realize he got so emotional and he shed a tear. And the director's like, okay, we have to do that again because you're part Vulcan. You can't. You're part. Actually, he's part alien. And this alien doesn't show emotion, and they're not Vulcans. That was a slip, but that wasn't the right slip.
Right.
I don't want to spoil it because it's a really good episode. And then, funny part, he does that. It's still the 80s. He has a job as a maitre d' in a restaurant, like an hour away from Hollywood.
Oh wow!
So he's the maitre d' out there, and he's like, because he did that so that way no one would run into him. He's like, okay. So of course the entire cast shows up. Oh, with I think they had instruments too.
Oh wow!
And then he's like, in his head, he's like, oh shit, I'm running into them here. But he said that it was just really cool to run into them, and also really a little embarrassing at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was cool to get that cameo from him, and I love that episode to death. There's a lot of good themes. I could break down a whole podcast episode about that.
Nice.
Masks is another really cool one. It's when like this another ancient civilization no longer exists, but they saved themselves in a way that they could be remembered in some form or fashion. And fantastic acting by Brent Spiner. Like, absolutely kills it. And Picard kills it as always. Those are really episodes that I really love to this day. You want to break down the next episode?
The greatest episode on the Star Trek? No, I'm just kidding. It's not the greatest episode of Star Trek Next Generation, but it's a very notable one.
It's a very notable one, and I want to say that all actors have disavowed this episode. Like they completely like Mission Impossible. Ethan Hunt is not a person who we know. We do not confirm nor deny anything he has done.
Yes.
Like they were like, this is the worst television episode I have ever seen / acted in.
It's a filler episode for the first season.
Is it a filler? I feel it's just like some guy trying to do something in Star Trek and they just fail. So it's called Code of Honor.
Code of Honor.
Yeah.
We nickname it as Utopia.
So can you break down what a Hotep is and what that means?
A Hotep is usually a male, black male, who is entrenched with the history of Africa, particularly Egypt, or Kemetic things,
right?
And basically are African style misogynist. If that makes, if that's pretty much what it is too. Like, yeah, everything's attributed to black people.
It's like you pick up a fork and it's like, black people made that.
Yes, black people made this. We was in Egypt with the pyramids, and we was in the labs making this.
You go and you put on a shoelace. It's like, well, Egypt did this first.
Exactly.
It's just like literally everything.
And everything should be for the black man. Black women should be up under black men. It's a weird
kind of twist on
weird Yeah.
Yeah.
But they, for some reason, in the 80s... in the 80s, in the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation, we have a Hotep planet.
And so I made like whenever I make the graphics for the episodes, I had some free time one day, so I made this episode of like Journey to Hotepia, and only cost $300 or one white woman. and before you get mad, there's a reason I said that is because it's a central theme of the episode. I'm not condoning selling white women to anybody or selling anybody. Okay.
So the Enterprise meets up with these people. This group of people is all black planet.
Yeah.
And
it's just a very amorphous blob of culture. It does not make any sense.
It makes no sense. They're like wearing turbans and like they just borrowed a whole bunch of stuff from random cultures and put it in there.
Yeah, they're just like, this makes sense.
Yeah. But it's all black planet, and for some reason the Enterprise is like there for some type of resource or some technology.
So apparently they developed
something for a virus.
They developed a vaccine, which makes no sense, honestly, considering the technology that we have seen. Well, that's not true. Considering the type of society that they have.
Yeah.
It makes
apparently they're super wealthy.
They're super wealthy.
Yeah.
So they developed a vaccine.
The vaccine.
And the Federation needs this vaccine.
So they're meeting them or whatever. And of course, like it's culture shock for both parties or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Hoteps on there.
Every time you say it, it's funny. Why?
The lead Hotep, the actor, by the way, who plays the main guy, is actually the cop, the evil cop from Boys in the Hood. I think he passed away recently.
Yeah.
But he's the evil one that like basically terrorizes Cuban Gooding character on there.
Yeah,
and like he's like, I hate black people and all this stuff and all. But of course he's in this episode.
And we didn't catch it until I looked it up because he doesn't have a mustache.
No, he doesn't have a mustache. Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, you were dying. You were absolutely dying when I found that out.
I can't believe I didn't notice it before. But,
I mean, dude, same.
But it's hilarious. So like, they're trying to trade for the vaccine, and then the Hoteps or whatever notice that women on the Enterprise have equal bidding or have equality with the men on the ship, and they take a surprise. And one of them like does something that like challenges what's her name? Tasha's authority, and like she like judo flips him or some shit like that. And he's like, whoa.
She does a good job.
Good job.
Like for 80s combat, I was actually like a little impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's an Aikido. I think she's learning Aikido in the episode.
So the main, I guess, correspondent or also who their main person they're dealing with is amazed by this or whatever. And
Lieutenant.
Yeah, Lieutenant. Yeah. Lieutenant.
That's how they fucking say his name too.
Lieutenant. Yes. So he's like, oh man, I'm attracted to her. I want her. And so they do like a little switcheroo thing, which is apparently how they do a lot of business. It's like they had like some like a little game that they play where they take something of the other person.
Yeah, like so yes.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm not going to delve into it. Fuck
we
it.
don't need. It's not. Yeah, it doesn't need more time. But
I'm not giving anything more.
Yeah, they do like a trade for like the virus or something, and then he snatches up the security officer and then teleports back to his planet. He kidnaps her basically or whatever.
Yeah, and so they have to bring her back, and it's just like I thought it was so much easier watching it with you because we just made fun of it the whole time.
Yeah, but you can't. It makes no sense.
Like there's some episodes in Star Trek that we will unabashedly say like, what the fuck were we doing?
Yeah.
Like especially poor, and she makes fun of it. She has her own, Gates McFadden has her own podcast. Random story, one of the professors at SLU apparently knew her.
Oh, wow.
Like they were in Chicago at some point, and she was like, yeah, I'm about to go here. And she's like, it's a new Star Trek show. It was Gates McFadden.
That's just, wow.
It was random Knowles famous people connection that he has. So Gates McFadden even set herself on her own podcast to Tawny Newsome.
Uh-huh.
And she said the joke in the best way. You never see it coming in the podcast, too. She goes like, she hates the episode Sub Rosa just as much as everyone else. Which you're rolling your eyes because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's the one where she has sex with a ghost, and not only sex with a ghost, but sex with a ghost that has sex with every like female in her family.
Oh my
god! Like every ancestral female that she has had sex with this ghost, and it doesn't make any sense. You find out he's an alien. So
yeah.
About like what the fuck was going on, and Gates McFadden said like, by the time we realized what it was turning into, like I couldn't change it.
You just gotta roll with the car crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we're conveying how like terrible it is, but like you just gotta watch that episode.
There are some episodes that are like I can totally understand people who haven't watched it like be like, what's the point of watching this? And that's fine. That's how dated things work.
Yeah,
it just don't
move. It's a pocket episode, but like it doesn't add anything to Star Trek
or take away anything. They don't even talk about it later.
Yeah,
I think maybe Lower Decks makes a reference, maybe. But there's some episodes that definitely are very cheesy 80s. There are a lot of episodes that hold up today.
Yeah.
The drumhead still holds up today.
Yeah, yeah.
Like with woke culture. Like calling people, like trying to drag people down as much as they can and not seeing people as people, but rather seeing them as like, oh, you're this, well, then we got to write you off completely.
Exactly.
Immediately. And there's episodes about Wesley falling in love, and a beautiful episode of him. Basically, it's the dolphin. I play it every once in a while. Random fact: the girl Celia, she's a psychologist now in like California.
That's crazy.
It's nuts, absolutely nuts. I googled her; like she's aged really well too.
Nice.
But like, it's a beautiful episode about falling in love and how you'll do it many times.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was great parts of Wesley Crusher being on that show. He gets shafted on a lot, but and I'm kind of glad they wrote him out because I feel it was not only good for Will Wheaton, but it was good for the character because it even showed that the Federation is a great thing, but even it has problems and you can do other things too.
Exactly.
You know, there's room for both.
Yeah.
As I love to say. Yeah, it's a really good show. We love it. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
With all the good and bad.
One of the better parts of the 90s for me.
Better parts of the 90s and the 80s that I remember as well. I only remember the 90s part, so be it. Yeah. But yeah, so stay tuned. You want to have any final thoughts, my friend?
Just that, the show is a vital part of my childhood. It got me interested more into science fiction than anything so far, and
same.
I appreciate it.
It gives me hope for the future in a lot of ways. Like, if we wanted to do it, we could. Yeah, we could. And I take that to home. Yeah, thanks for coming on, dude. This was so much fun.
Yes,
dude. I had a blast. I threw the clock out the window on this. Yeah,
episode. We could sit here and talk forever about Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh, we could. Well, as long as I could do a bathroom break and my leg could wake up right now, that would be great. But thank you so much, man.
No problem, man.
Hey, fan peeps. Thanks for listening, and I'd love any feedback you have for me. Please follow the Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and follow us everywhere, social media-wise, under the handle @TNAHpod. That goes for Twitter and Instagram, and one of these days, I'll be super popular. We're way over like an hour. I don't even care. I don't even care. I don't even care anymore. I'll edit it later if we have to, but I don't give a fuck. I'm enjoying it.